Good afternoon to everybody here. It's good morning for me, but I'm sure you all have already heard that joke a handful of times. My name is Dominic Sandell. I am a student at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and we are performing a research study on the effects of finasteride on the period rates of female drosophila melanogaster. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the overall experiment. Finasteride, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is a alpha reductase that is typically used for male pattern baldness and large prostates. While and there are a few unfortunate side effects, including erectile dysfunction and general infertility. However, this particular medication has not been widely studied on the effects of women, especially since similar drugs tend to have a more potent side effects. We wanted to see if that was the case. Apologize, I'm getting over a bit of a cough. We wanted to see if these effects are then similar in women, especially since this drug could be used to assist in conditions such as female alopecia as well as polycystic ovary syndrome. And next slide, please. The study was constructed to see if it would negatively affect the period rates of female Drosophila melanogaster, since obviously we are not able to use it on any human trials just yet. A bit of background, Drosophila melanogaster is commonly known as fruit flies. The reason we chose this particular monoorganism is because they react similarly to medications as humans do, and they reproduce and mature very quickly, which is very beneficial when doing a period rate-based project. A little more information on finasteride. The large class it is part of is an enzyme inhibitor, specifically reduces the dihydrotestosterone by inhibiting the 5-alpha reductase. Decrease in DHT reduces the hair loss, as is the main treatment focus. Next slide, please. So getting into the actual study we did, our method is based on, so we first will order our population of flies from, we order from Carolina, company, where we will then separate the flies out into female and male. And since we want to ensure that our sample flies have as least defined variables as possible, we separate them out, and then after some time, we'll mix the males and females back together into singular tubes, and then once they begin laying eggs after a few days, we'll then remove them, and then once the new Drosophila begin to hatch, we'll separate them into female and male groups where they have not been matured fully. So then, when they are fully starting to mature, we know they are virgins. Since one interesting fact about Drosophila is that female Drosophila will hold onto and store the male semen so that it is able to reproduce for a longer rate of time. We don't want that, so we want to make sure we're focusing purely on the medicated samples. So the female flies are then given the finasteride dosages as seen on the right here. We give equivalent dosages based on the human dosage from the 0 milligrams, 0.5 milligrams, 1.0 milligrams, and 5.0 milligrams to see if to compare an underdose, an appropriate dose, and an overdose of the drug. After the females have been drugged for about 48 hours, we will then introduce 2 male flies for every 10 female flies and allow them to reproduce. After they have fully had opportunities to mate and lay as many eggs as possible, we then remove the parent and have about a 10-day incubation period. During this time, we'll have about 12 tubes in total using our 3 trials and the 4 test groups, as I mentioned before, where over the course of 10 days, we will remove the flies as they hatch to ensure that they do not begin to reproduce themselves, again, to limit as many confounding variables as possible. As the flies hatch and mature, we will count them and store them in separate tubes, male and female once again, to mention limit the reproduction, and store them for future studies that I will go into a little bit later. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of our results. This first trial up here is going to be our trial 1, and as you can see here, the blue shaded background is the control, which you can see has significantly higher number of survival rates, especially compared to our final group, the 5.0 milligrams. Significant difference here, which would support the fact that the drug does in fact have negative side effects. However, going into our second trial, for whatever reason, we see the reverse, having that the lower dosage and the appropriate dosage have significantly lower number of survival rates as well. So considering these conflicting results, we want to look at our third trial. So we want to do next slide. And here we see another conflicting result. However, our background research and overall literature review show that this was one of the more common results found across different research studies where if they're given the appropriate amount of the medication, they tend to have a higher survival rate. We believe this is because if given the under dosage, the organism will essentially overreact and cause difficulties in reproduction period rates. And same thing if we overdose the flies as well. Go into our next slide. So this is a bit of a large picture of each of our different tables, looking at our first, second, and third trial. While we are confident to say that there is clearly some kind of effect given the finasteride on the female Drosophila before they are able to reproduce, decreasing period rates to some degree. Given the conflicting results, we are not confident enough to say what direction this change may be in or to what degree, depending on the dosage rates. We do believe this is called for a more in-depth apologies, a more in-depth study, as well as definitely some more further investigations into other aspects that may have caused these conflicting results. Next slide. So, as mentioned, some of our conflicting results believe is that the Drosophila may have suffocated in the food that we use because the food requires a certain amount of water to keep it edible for the flies. We want to make sure we have enough water for them to eat it, but not enough that would actually drown them. One important side effect of finasteride, since it does affect the testosterone pathways and the overall hormone regulation of the flies, it could have significantly decreased their physical movement and overall ability to move around. So, and if the movement was decreased, it is possible some of the younger flies may have perished in the Drosophila medium of the food, which would have obviously affect our results. So, looking into some future directions, as mentioned before, we're going to hold on to those Drosophila that have the children of the drugged parents, using this study to see if their movement is decreased significantly using the grid petri dish as well as a recording device through our microscope to determine if the control flies move significantly more than the drugged ones. And that would support the idea that it would suggest that some of the flies may have perished during the experimental study and would encourage another study with perhaps different methods, see if we can put a cap on that particular confounding variable. Next slide. Okay, so, in conclusion, I will say that this study does have a rather low precision when it comes to results, as you all saw very clearly with our conflicting tables. It most certainly requires more trials, which meant that as scores are low movement, resulting in preemptive deaths before we were able to count them. This could have been in the larva or even the premature. Apologize so much for that. In the premature stages. And we do believe that behavioral aspects of the future study would shed light on this scenario. Next slide. Okay, so I know that was rather a quick rundown of our particular experiment, but if there's any questions, please let me know and I'll be happy to explain them to the best of my ability.